Hey guys, welcome to the Improvement Podcast, where the mission is to help young men develop their character, identity, and mindset in order to activate their potential and achieve their goals in life. So, on today's episode, we have another special guest. His name is SF Banks. He is a publisher, creator, and innovator. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, man.
Yes,
And,
sir.
and so, just to give the listeners an idea of who you are, could you tell them a little bit about your background and what you do?
So my background is youth development. I've been in youth development for over 20 years and started out with I Am Defense Institute. It was a self-defense program for women and children. And from there, we went to You Can Have It All youth conferences, which is designed to motivate kids to go after their dreams. Camp Warrior King, which is a youth development camp, which is all about exposing kids to extracurricular activities they normally wouldn't experience during the year. And You Can Have It All magazine, which is all about motivating kids to, be inspired by other youth that are doing great things. In addition to that, I created Team Hot Sauce, which are personal development characters designed to motivate kids and inspire them to have better character. And a Team Hot Sauce Success Stacks, which builds self-efficacy. So, and we stay pretty busy.
Hey, I can tell, and I definitely respect what you do. It's something that's definitely needed. We're kind of, I guess you could say, doing similar lines of work. And so I know that as far as on my story, there was definitely a catalyst for me, or definitely experiences for me that kind of guided me to want to do this on the side of my part-time on the side of my job. But what I wanted to know was what inspired you to do the magazine and to get into the character development and everything for kids full time.
The need. So when we were doing Camp Warrior King and I Am Defense, the martial arts program, the martial arts, of course, is a whole body experience, really. So it's developing the mind, body, and the spirit. And Camp Warrior King is exposure, but there was still a bigger need to be able to get kids motivated and going after their dream on a different level. And the camp and the martial arts program is local, right? You can only work with so many kids at a time. You can only motivate so many kids at a time, physically. But with the magazine, then we can have a further reach. So it's really about having a greater reach to be able to motivate more children around the world. I believe that motivation is a universal language, meaning that everybody wants to be motivated. Everybody wants to be happy generally, right? People want to feel good about themselves. And so we want to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely a noble cause. And something else that kind of popped across my mind that I wanted to ask you about related to that is, what was it about helping kids and the self-defense and everything that resonated with you personally to make it to where it was something you could really tie yourself to and devote yourself to? Was it like an experience? Was it something that went on in your life or what?
Well, with the self-defense program, the seed was planted in my heart years ago. My aunt and cousin were murdered in a domestic violence situation. And from that moment, I always wanted to do something to, honor them, so that their death wasn't, something that was in vain. So 10 years later, 10 years after they were murdered, started the I Am Defense Institute for Women and Children in honor of my aunt, my cousin. And so that was what really motivated me to do it. But initially, I had no passion to work with kids at all. I wasn't interested in working with youth. It wasn't my background. It wasn't something that I felt comfortable doing. I wasn't interested. I mean, I absolutely didn't want to do it. And even when people would say, "Hey, man, you should work with youth. You seem pretty good at it," I would, like dismiss it, like, "Nah, I'm not doing that." And it just kept coming back around. And so finally, the door closed on the other things I was doing. I was in business, in real estate, and when the market changed, it left kind of closed some doors, and I had to figure out something else to do. And fortunately, I wasn't hard headed for too long and started getting into youth development.
Yeah, Jesus, I definitely wasn't expecting a story like that. That was not in the bio.
Yes, sir.
That's intense, but I can definitely see how something like that could spark you, because that's pretty traumatic to have something like that happen in your life. And so,
Right.
To see that strike so close to home, I can see how that could change your perspective on the need for that sort of thing, and how you could use your gifts that you had to be able to help people to avoid situations like that.
Right.
Definitely.
Right.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, it was really traumatic for our family, and it just felt like, okay, if maybe, just maybe, if she had been aware or had some sense of what to do in a situation like that, maybe she, her life could have been spared, or my cousin's life could have been spared. And, it's, you never know, but, at least now, we're helping other people to, hopefully prevent the same situation from happening to them and one of their loved ones.
Yeah, I respect it. And one thing that I would at least assume is that by you taking this sort of role to provide that sort of value when it comes to the self-defense and developing kids, I'm sure that it's a lot more fulfilling just due to the fact that, this is something that, directly correlates to events that happen in your life, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's definitely fulfilling to be able to do it, and to see that there was some positive that's coming out of a tragic situation, right? So we all deal with tragedies in our life, and sometimes you're able to do something positive about it, sometimes you're not. And this is a situation where we were actually able to do something positive about it, or in response to it, and be able to help other people. So that's definitely gratifying to be able to do that, and to see women and children, or even with our development program, see young adults go on to other levels, and to do other things in their life.
Right. Because I mean, it's a choice at the end of the day, whether or not you're going to turn into something positive or let that negativity eat you up and
Absolutely.
let that energy out in other ways. But it was one of
Absolutely.
those things about taking that positive route is for you to be able to craft it into positivity. There's some growth. There's some, I guess, soul searching. There's some pain that you have to face and you have to kind of process. What was that
Right.
process like for you?
To As far as developing, as far as with my aunt, my cousin, or from what aspect?
So how it affected you personally and everything, kind of facing that situation and coping with it.
Uh-huh.
What would you say was some of the work that you had to do to get to a point to where it was something you could come to terms with and at the same time push yourself forward to be able to offer value in the best way?
For me, it was the determination that I was going to do something about it. That I was going to do something in their honor one day. That was what gave me a sense of resolve. Was holding on to that. One day I'll be able to do something. I don't know what it is. I mean, it was, like I said, it was 10 years from the time that they were murdered to the time that I started the I Am Defense Institute. And so that's a pretty long time, especially when you're young. I mean, I was 17, right, when it
Hmm.
happened. And so I mean, for 17 to 27, it's like a lifetime, right? And so it was a really long time before I was able to do something. But, and in that process, time, you know, healed a lot of things. A lot of my other family members were impacted a lot more um, than I was, just because I was younger, and, and they were a lot closer. Like, like my mom or my sister, right, in those situations. But the resolve that I was going to one day be able to do something in their honor was something that, allowed me to push through it. That that was what gave me hope to keep going, and what allowed me not to get sucked into a deep depression over it.
That's great. So from what it sounds like, just making that declaration that you were going to do something about it was something that I guess put it on your mind, made it to where it could be a possibility down the road. And
Absolutely.
then it just so happens that you, I guess you developed the mindset at that point after 10 years to be able to have an eye for positive outlets, I guess you
Right.
could say.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I believe that in situations in life, it's you know you can't always do something about what happened, right? But you can always change your attitude on how it impacts you. You can always make a decision with
And how
with
you're going to
how
respond,
how you're
right?
going to respond to it. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
this was a situation in my life where it was like, okay, this is how I'm going to respond to it. I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to allow it to consume me and eat me alive, because everybody is not as fortunate. Even, I mean, in my family, I mean, we have family members that were really deeply impacted by it, and it totally changed. Just their life, and that was unfortunate that it happened. I was fortunate to be able to have that resolve, and I didn't know whether or not that resolve was gonna uh, make it easier for me. It was just, I just held on to that. Every time I would get angry about it, then it would, hey, I'm gonna do something about it. Fortunately, he was, arrested, and he got justice in that. He was then so end up serving time in prison, well, life in prison. And so, we got some justice behind that. So that helped out a lot. But even still, it didn't replace the fact that they were gone.
When you were saying that, it reminded me of a guy that I talked to some years back, and he had a friend that committed suicide. So it's not, of course, directly related to this situation, but
Sure.
the point that he was making was that when you just have somebody just abruptly taken from your life, he said it's kind of like a shockwave, I guess you could say, because
Yes.
there are ways that death impacts your life that you never would have thought of course, because you never would have pictured that person just being gone like that. I mean, you can even
Right.
think about it like this. Let's say somebody's father just like died in a car accident or something like that.
Right.
Next thing you know, they wake up for school the next day. They're trying to, I don't know, go back to normal, wherever it is.
Right.
Dad used to be the one to bring them to school,
Right.
or dad used to be the one to pick them up or something like that.
Right.
Or they used to come home from the bus and they'd see him sitting on the couch
Right.
or something like that, watching TV, just all these different things. And, then people further removed from it where,
Right.
his friends may have golfed with him every week. All of a sudden you don't see him there anymore. Maybe he was the guy that brought the balls. And
Right.
so just kind of thinking about that and how you said that it impacted some of the people in your family in a much stronger way. That was
Right.
just the thing that kind of popped into my mind. And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of miss. And, I guess bringing up the suicide thing too, that was just something that, kind of reminded me of. And so just something to consider, even though it's not
Right.
directly related, but
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, tragedy impacts people's lives, and it impacts everybody differently. Everybody deals with tragedy differently, and then based on the person and the relationship, they deal with it differently. But tragedy, it is exactly what it is. It's tragedy, right? It's a jolting thing, and coping with that is, I don't think that there is a one way that everybody copes with tragedy. I think that everybody deals with it differently based on their makeup and based on, you start going into like their belief system and on down the line. What I do know is that with any situation, the the thing is, however you can, you got to continue to press forward. And I think that any person that we lose in a tragedy, the last thing they would want any of us to do is to not keep going and to just stop, right? Like none of them will want us to just give up and quit and throw in the towel. They would all want you to keep going and keep pressing and keep moving forward. And especially now, I mean, with the suicide rates being as high as they are, especially with young men, one of the things that, because there's so much going on in the world, young men have to find something to hold on to. They have to find some resolve, some purpose, some meaning to hold on to. And it's different for everybody, just based on their path in life and based on where they've been. But they have to find something to hold on to. And when they can't, man, the other thing is not being afraid to seek help. If you're in a situation where you're like, man, I'm consumed with, I can't get out of this dark place. I can't break out of it. I've tried everything I know to do. I've done this, I've done that. I've called friends. I've been to church. I've been down. I've been baptized 5 times. I've been prayed for. I talked to the pastor. I talked to my mom and my daddy. I've done right. Okay. So then when they feel like all hope is lost, then what do? It is, if they haven't went to go get help or get yourself admitted, so that you're safe, because you do more good being alive than you do being gone.
I like how you tied that all together. I know
Yeah.
I was kind of off the wall, but then
Oh, sorry.
you kind of found a way to mesh it in.
Yes,
But
sir.
I think that's great. One point that you made about the purpose, when it comes to young men, and I definitely agree with that, where a lot of them, maybe the reason why they take their life is because they don't really see, well, I guess I would imagine this is probably a reason for the majority of them, if not all, they don't really see a point in even living anymore.
Mhm.
And if someone had a purpose that they were driving towards, there would be a whole lot more incentive to stick around. And
Right.
something that I think a lot of people that commit suicide don't consider is really how selfish it is. And, that might be controversial to say
Mhm.
something like that, but this is the way I look at it.
Mhm. Mhm.
By them taking themselves out of their situation like that, just abruptly, and only thinking about their interest,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know if everyone's situation could be different, but I would imagine there's something you could do to communicate with somebody and get
Mhm.
the point across to them, to the point to where they were trying to help you before
Right.
you end up doing something like that to yourself. But when you decide to do it,
Mhm.
that leaves the people around you with a certain type of guilt that they'll probably never be able to get over.
Right.
Just
Right.
knowing that you felt that your life was so horrible and they were part of
Mhm.
that life that was so horrible, that you
Right.
feel like you had to take your life instead of going to them and communicating. And
Right.
so that's just the way that I think about it. And I
Right.
know that if a lot more young men had purpose, like you were saying, had things to put their energy to, something to
Mhm.
dedicate their life to, that would happen a lot less.
Right. Right. And I agree. I mean, it would happen a lot less. I mean, everybody's, situation and story with that is different, right? I mean, the but especially the ones who have a loving structure, right? The ones that have people that were supporting or that are supporting, that believe in them and want more for them and are willing to do whatever it takes for them to get help, and then they still, decide to take their life. Yes, that is a very, 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 very selfish thing. I mean, you call it what it is, and it's okay to call it that. It is a very selfish thing. It doesn't take away the sting from it, but it's a very selfish thing to do because now you have, a whole family of people, right, that are forever impacted by this thing and cannot get answers and can't change it. And so it's a very traumatic thing. But purpose, I think purpose, especially for young men, changes a lot of things. Purpose changes a lot of things, especially young men, because the as young adults, as young men, you want something that you're driving towards, something that you're believing in. And a lot of times we're looking in the past. And when you're looking in the past, you're looking at the way things used to be. And when you're focused on the past, you can't see what's coming, right? There's a reason why when you're driving, the rear view mirror is really, really small and the windshield is really, really big. It's because you're supposed to look back in the back for reference, right? Not to just stare at it, right? What's in
Right.
front of you is big. That's where your eyes should be set. And so it's your past is very small in comparison to your future. Your future is big, like the windshield. Your past is small, right? And as far as impacting your life, like a rear view mirror. Even the side mirrors. I mean, you think about it like that. Either side, it's real small. You're supposed to look to the
Hmm.
left, to the right. You don't stay over there looking in the side mirror for a long time, right? Look over there, see what you need to do, get over there and do it, right? Which means that in that respect, right, keep your distractions small, right? So looking behind you, the past, you keep that small. You don't look back for a long time. And those distractions to the left and to the right, you keep that small. Right now, some distractions are good, right? You play a video game, hang out with your friends, go do something R&R, whatever. It's good, but you're not supposed to stay over there, right? You're supposed to stay in front, marching forward, pressing forward, and that's why it's called pressing. If it wasn't called pressing, that means there wouldn't be any challenges. And a lot of young brothers now, I don't know why they expect for life to be easy. Life is not designed to be easy. If it was designed to be easy, you wouldn't have a reason to have any faith. And it's not easy for any person, regardless of what color you are. Every person of every color on this planet has their own set of challenges. Every group has their own set of challenges. And the thing is that regardless of what your challenge is, you face it head on. Know that you're bigger than whatever your challenge is, and you press.
I like this. I like this what we're getting into. So let's press on that a little bit. So you mentioned how a lot of young men today want things to be easy. They don't want to take that challenge. They don't want to pursue growth or whatever it is that can, probably hurt their ego, hurt their feelings,
Right,
anything like that. And what do you
right.
think is the cause of a lot of that, where you see a lot of young men not wanting to, I guess, delve into the path of, like, I guess, a fulfilling life? It's going to come with challenges and heartbreaks and things like that.
There's so many different factors. I don't think that there's just one, but there are several. One is, we've created a culture where everybody gets a trophy, right? Where every
Mhm.
kid gets a trophy at a award ceremony, right? Because you participated, right? You might come in 30th place, but you get a trophy. So you have no reason to want to do better because you still
Right.
got a trophy, right? As opposed to, no, you don't get a trophy because you sucked and you got to do better. And it's okay if you didn't do well, you got to do better. And by doing better, then you'll earn that trophy. So they lose their grit. They don't have a reason to have any grit if you're gonna get it, if you're gonna get a trophy anyway. That's one. Another issue, especially in the Black community, with our young men, is there is a huge lack of fathers. There's a big lack of fathers, and I'm a product of a single mother, right? So, but there is a huge lack of fathers in the Black community. So there's a certain balance that comes into play, right? And a lot of our young men are lacking. They lack their fathers, so then they're lacking the male relationship or the way that a man grooms and raises a child. They're lacking that, a lot of them, and that impacts us differently. Some of us are able to say, okay, well, we get mentors, right? Like for me, I had a lot of male mentors in my life that made up for the fact that my dad didn't live with me. I knew him, right? I could go see him, I could talk to him, but a lot of the part of my life, it was over the phone. He wasn't present. So I had a lot of male mentors that were helping me out. Well, now you don't even have the male mentorship that you had before, or the mentorship that you have is bad, where they're leading them in the wrong direction, where they want this microwave society. So a lot of the young men, their mentors are on television, their mentors are on music, right? And there's nothing wrong with actors and rappers, and there's nothing wrong with that, but those aren't the people that are supposed to be raising your children. And they're raising your children through their words and a rap lyric, right? If a kid is taking that rap lyric and they're using that for their example in life, and that's the primary example they have, then something's wrong. If they're celebrating the fact that, okay, I was able to sell this and that to make this money real quick, and I'm smashing this chick over there, and oh yeah, and I'm smashing your chick too, and I'm driving off in this right here, like there's no repercussions for those decisions, then they don't want to go get a job. They don't want to go and start a business that's going to take time and effort and patience to make it happen. They want the fast thing. So it's just like fast food or microwave food, right? It takes longer to cook a nice big meal, but it tastes better as opposed to throwing something in the microwave. Same thing.
Okay. Okay. So just to kind of recap on what you said, I grabbed three things. All right. So you said the participation trophy type culture in society that's been built where everybody, I guess you could say, feels entitled to get a reward.
Yeah.
Then you said the lack of strong male role models, mainly like in the households. And then the third thing that you said was I guess the microwave society, where I guess we could really sum it up to people not having a good idea of what the real path is towards success. Because something
Right.
that I've noticed about those same people that you mentioned that young guys might look up to, rappers, athletes, and all that, all these guys are most of the time in there, they're like, late teens, early 20s, maybe
Right.
30s, something like that. And so
Right.
that kind of, I guess, pushes that idea that it's supposed to be something quick, since a
Right.
lot of these guys looking up to them are young
Right.
too. And that
Right.
kind of even goes back to the male role model thing, where if they had solid male role models in the house that are modeling what, I guess, common success, I'll say, or productive success looks like,
hmm
then they would have a much better expectation of how life is going to be. Am I
Well,
am I
yeah.
kind of on the path you're saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, well, think about it like this. I mean, when you see we'll just say an entertainer, right? Just an entertainer, and it's unfair to them that they have to be put in this position to be role models for a million kids, right? It's unfair to
Right.
them to have to be put up on that pedestal because they're human too. And so what happens? You take an example, somebody like a Bill Cosby, right, where this was America's dad, right? And that was his title. Man, that's
Hmm.
way up on a pedestal, right? This is somebody that was a dad to everybody, so to speak, right? Well, then you find out that there's this other side of him, right? That he's being accused of doing all these things, and then he gets knocked off that pedestal. Well, here's the thing: he's still America's dad, right? He's not perfect. And one of the things that happens is this idea that they're supposed to be perfect, this idea of perfection. And so then when they don't, so then when they're knocked off that pedestal, then all of a sudden now there's no figure to look at, right? We always end up having these one or two people that we got to look at as like the idea of what a person should be, or what a dad should be in the Black community, or what a male should be. But the reality is that when you look at some of these people that our kids are idolizing, they're only seeing one side. They're only seeing the success, right? The shiny thing, the money, that part. They're not seeing all the other parts of this person's life. They're not seeing, right? Because success is the whole pie. Success is not just money. They're not seeing the health challenges they go through, or if their health is good, what the relationships like with their family, what the relationship, their mental health, uh, you know, area. They're not seeing what their life is like with family or friends, right? All those things that go into what success is. They don't see that. They just see one aspect, and so I think that misleads a lot of youth.
Yeah, 100%. And to kind of add to this, of course, tying back into what you said about having father figures in the household,
Mhm.
it really starts right there.
Mhm.
Of course, people will look to these celebrities and they'll say, well, at least people used to say that they wanted that like Jada and that Will type love. And I mean, you
Right.
see how that played out. But really,
Right.
should people even be having to look to people on a TV that they never even met before in their life as
Right.
like mentors or models in the first place? It really should start at home, and then
At
from
home.
there into your local community. There
Right.
really should be enough examples around you locally, people that you could actually talk to face, to
Right.
where you don't even need to go out and look for these people that you'll never even meet in your life, never be able to see, the full depth of them as a person or anything, and try and get them to be a role model for you. And then for the
Right.
people who do that, where you could even say, I do that to a degree, looking at people on LinkedIn or something that where I like their content, but
Mhm.
there's a certain level of maturity that you have to take with it, because of
Right.
course, as you get older, I mean, sure, you definitely know, you just mentioned it, you have to look at people and I'll say see traits that you want to
Right.
model in yourself. Don't maybe not
Right.
look at that person and put them on this pedestal like you were saying, and see them as like this deity or a god or something, but
Right.
say,
Right.
hey, I don't know who that guy is behind closed doors, but all I know is this: when I see him speak to people, I like his charisma, I like the way that he communicates. I'm going to
Right.
model that in myself, and I'm going to do the same. That way, you're
Right.
really not let down at the end of the day,
Right.
because there was something that you're looking to him for.
Right. Absolutely. I agree 1,000%. Right. It's taking the characteristics, the traits that you like. Right. Like, it's it and that's a great thing. And it's two things. We were talking about, you were mentioning, looking at somebody like a Jada and Will and wanting that relationship, and right, and how people model that. The thing is that it was never designed that, okay, if you're in the nucleus, right, and you're supposed to have layers of friendships or layers of relationships. So you're in a nucleus and they're supposed to spiral out. Okay.
Mhm.
So you have your inner circle, right? Your holies of holies, for example, your mom, your dad, or whoever raised you, right? Those people, those closest people in your life, that those are the people that really you want to model, right? Because those are the people that know you, that love you unconditionally. They want the best for you. And especially if they're related to you, those are the easiest people to model, because you have their DNA. You look like them, you walk like them, you talk like them. I could be more like my dad than I can be like Michael Jordan. So if we're talking about that nucleus, my dad is here. Michael Jordan is way out here. Like you said, it's somebody I'll never see, I'll never have a conversation with. Maybe I can read a book, but that book is pretty much designed to get me to buy the book, right? It's not necessarily, it's telling me things they want me to know, not the real truth about them, their fears and their real character behind closed doors, right? I'm seeing the front stage, not the backstage. And so I can never really measure up to being that person, but I can be like my dad, right? I can do that because I have his DNA. And so that's the reason why you have fathers, you have grandfathers, right? Look at particularly in the Black community, a huge lack of grandfathers. So all that wisdom is gone. So you have a male child, and this male child doesn't have a father, or doesn't know who their father is, doesn't have a relationship with their father, don't know their grandfather, don't know who their grandfather is, don't have a relationship with him, may not know their aunts or their uncles, right? Or you might have one or two uncles, and then their intentions either aren't good, or they're not living how they're supposed to be living, or maybe you have that, but that DNA strand, that father and that grandfather, all that wisdom is not there. So there's a reason why so many young men are lacking confidence, right? While they don't have the confidence, while they don't have the self-efficacy to believe that they can do something, because they can't turn to see a dad that did it. They can't turn to see a grandfather that did it. Just the stories and the history of how they made it through certain challenges. They don't have to be rich, just how they made it through. How'd your granddad make it through the Great Depression? How did he make it through the Civil Rights Movement? What did he do? What was that like? Right? That fortitude that he had to have to make it. Right? That's part of what the makeup that a child has. Man, I can do it because my granddad was marching with, Malcolm X or Eldridge Cleaver or Dr. King or doing whatever, or he was part of, the SCLC, or he was doing this over here, or he was in the military, or he wasn't doing none of that. He was over in law school, or he was, he was a trash man, but he was doing XYZ. He served as a deacon at his church, right? Whatever the story is, that's missing, right? And so there's no foundation. And so what happens is that then you have single mothers, a lot of times, or grandmothers, or guardian that has to raise a child that doesn't have that foundation. And so that's part of the challenge that we're seeing. It's not just with Black children. You're seeing it with white children. You're seeing it with Hispanic children. You're seeing it with all kids. You're seeing it everywhere.
Right. I love it. I love it. I agree with pretty much everything that you're saying, and it all makes sense. And I can definitely see how, even applying some of those elements to my own upbringing, how it affected me. So I guess just to give you like a little bit of background about me, I had a father for most of my life, but from reflecting on it and listening to the stuff that you were saying, it really just made me think that, looking at my grandpa, like on his side, he was very quiet guy, didn't talk much, kind of worked, minded his own business, that sort of thing. And, while the idea of it, while I guess the system itself is solid, I guess the players in it are really going to be the biggest factor at the end of the day. And while your players aren't always going to be the best, in most cases, I'll say it's better to have some player there than no player on your team at all. And then that's what I'm talking about with the single moms and all that. And I wanted to tie this into it. A lot of people, I'm not going to, go to one side or the other. I'm just going to say people in general tend to look at one parent or the other parent and try and devalue that type of parent in general, saying that they're not necessarily needed. And so since this is a men's podcast, well, I wanted to ask you, due to the fact that you work with kids, due to the fact that this is something that you look at and that we're talking about right now, if someone asked you, what value do fathers bring to the table that a single mom couldn't bring, what would you tell them?
Off the cuff, that a mother couldn't bring. A mother can't show a young man how to be a man, and because she's not a man. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't care what she does, she's not a man. She can't show him how to be a man, right? And there's so many different facets of that. So when you start talking about, what do you mean, Sean, about how to be a man? Okay, how to be a man. How does a man have a relationship with God? A woman can't tell you that. She can't tell you how a man has a relationship with God, because a man that has a relationship with God is modeling God as a father. A mama can't be a father. She could be a mama. That's just what it is. Now, it doesn't mean she's not capable, and it doesn't mean that she doesn't end up having the ability to do it, right? Because we see that time and time again. But it's, how do they have that relationship, that accountability? How do they lead a family? How do they raise their children? How should they do it? Right? Those things she can't teach him. How is he supposed to be a provider? Right? How is he supposed to handle himself, that regardless of if the relationship between the father and the mother don't work out, how should he still deal with his children? Right? Those are things that a woman can't teach. The position of a man in a family is irreplaceable. Regardless of what we try to say or do, it is irreplaceable. You can't replace it. You can work around it, right? There's ways to obviously, right? There's ways to work around it to make it work. I mean, we're all here, but that position is irreplaceable. She can't talk to him, and she can't teach him how to be a man. How to get up. I mean, and then we talk about being a man, how to be, if we're talking specifically, how to be a Black man. The big difference on how to be a Black man in America compared to how to be a white man in America or a Hispanic man in America. right? How do you do that? What's the best way to navigate? And that is based on the relationship and the things that that man has experienced in his past. And he uses his experience in his past to teach his children. Son, based on what I've experienced, this is what you should look out for. And then that child says, oh, well, okay, dad, well, my experience might be a little different, but I have that knowledge now so that when I come up against what you're talking about, I know how to deal with that. Because, for example, in this country, a black woman is treated differently than a black man is treated in this country. So she can't teach him that. Right. And so it's those certain things we talk about specifics. But if
Mhm.
we get back generally, how to be a man, they can't do that.
Okay. And so I'll just add my 2 cents to this.
Please.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I can tell that you're a man of faith, and also that you're, with that being said, that your values and everything probably align more so with the traditional side of things. And so I'm Christian as well, but just to make it a little bit more, I guess, how do I put it? To make it like a little bit more general for maybe
Sure.
people that might not necessarily subscribe to traditional values or Christian
Sure.
values.
Sure.
What I'll say is that this is kind of my take or perspective on it. I definitely agree with what you said about specific situations, because at the end of the day, there are going to be certain things that a man comes across in life that a man has to deal with, where it comes to culture, stigma,
Sure.
your body, and those
Sure.
sorts of things, and the dynamics of being a man in a relationship, that it's going to be
Sure.
tough for a woman to teach a boy
Sure.
by herself. Of
Right.
course, she might be able to learn some of this stuff secondhand, or maybe just from empathizing and putting herself in the shoes of a man, she might be able to help to some
Sure.
degree, but I would
Sure.
imagine it's never going to be the same. But then
Sure.
another thing that I'll also add to it is that having two parents, I think that it just ends up making much more well-rounded people. And
Right.
so, to kind of sum up what you're saying, of course, we could take the traditional side of things and say,
Mm-hmm.
Provider, this and
Mm-hmm.
that's supposed to be the leader.
Mm-hmm.
But for, I guess, those people that might not necessarily be traditional, at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it's going to make a much more well-rounded kid if you
Mm-hmm.
have two brains working to foster growth in a child,
Right.
as opposed to just one. Because
Right.
something I talked to, I'm getting tongue twisted. Something I talked about another guest
Right.
about is
Right.
that whenever you have a whole lot on your plate,
Mm-hmm.
let's say like on the base level, as far as
Mm-hmm.
like just providing, it
Mm-hmm.
makes it very hard for you to go to that second level when it comes to developing the people in your house. Of course,
Right.
if you're
Yes.
feeding your kids and all that, if you're paying the bills, great, great, great. But I
Right.
think what a lot of people miss is that there are secondary levels to your child's care that go past just giving them food and having life, such
Absolutely.
as fostering that confidence, like you
Right.
talked about, and everything. And the
Right.
fact of the matter is that single mom or single dad, when you have the load of two people on your plate, it just kind of makes it hard to do that. And so the way I look at it is, if you have both of those parents in the house, of course, and then if they're both working too, that all that baseline stuff, that's not even an issue. And it
Right.
makes it where they have much more bandwidth between each other to make
Mm-hmm.
sure they're looking at their kid and seeing where he might be struggling, where those lapses might be, to
Right.
develop him overall into a better man.
Right. I
Does that
agree
make
1,000.
sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. I think that in a lot of ways, traditionalism is what's destroying culture now. Right. A lot of traditionalism is what's creating division and hatred. Right. The idea that things should be a certain way um, because it's been that way all this time. I don't subscribe to it. I think that, for example, if a child is loved, that's the most important thing, which is why you see children that have success in a single parent household, and then you'll have children that are in a two-parent household and end up, getting, abusing drugs or being strung out. And it's like, well, they had a mom and a dad, or they had a mom and a mom, or a dad and a dad. What happened? Right. But that there was still something lacking that child didn't get from those two people. So I think that I agree with you a lot. I think also, as far as providing, you're absolutely right. The role of a dad in a home is not to be the provider. It's to provide, right? Like, but that's just one of the hats. But if it's like, well, I pay the bills and I put food on the table and that's my role, then you're still missing 90% of the job, because what kids want more than anything is your time. They can care less about the Jordans if they can get your time. So but still back to the question of being a man, there's still, a woman still cannot teach a male child how to be a man. It doesn't mean that she can't teach him how to be successful or how to be a good person. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just means that she doesn't have, just like a man can't teach a girl how to be a woman.
Right.
Right. Like we never really get to that aspect. And that's not really the topic of the show, but just what happens when you have a single dad and the girl doesn't have a mom. Man, talk about what that dad goes through when he has a daughter and there's no mom, and it's like, wow, all the emotions and stuff she goes through. How do you handle that? Right? Same thing. A man can't teach a girl how to be a woman. Just can't do it, no matter how much he tries. And I don't know exactly why all that is. Maybe it's just a genetic makeup, but you just can't.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. And
Yeah,
it was interesting you made that point about traditionalism and how you said that it causes some issues in society. And
absolutely.
I can see where you're coming from. And this is what has popped out to me. A lot of times it seems as though a lot of guys that are underdeveloped in the areas that they need to be developed in want to take on, I guess, those responsibilities that come with being a traditional man without putting in the work to actually, you could say, deserve a role like that. I mean, it doesn't work for everybody, but at the end of the day, just like there are men that want to live a traditional lifestyle, there are women that want to live a traditional lifestyle. But
Sure.
one of the things I feel like a lot of men miss, and I'm just talking about the men just because that's related to the show,
Right.
is that in order to be this person that fits into that mold, or that is looked to be a leader and to be that support, to be that pillar in your house, you have to have certain traits to be able to do that. And what I see happening, even in my own home growing up, actually, is that whenever a man doesn't have those traits, and he, as a result, he isn't getting the results that he wants from the people that he's supposed to be leading in his house, a lot of guys will tend to act out in pretty negative ways to exercise more control, as opposed to doing that self-reflection and asking themselves, why is this the reaction that I'm getting?
Right. Right. Because it's, instead of being accountable.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, it boils down to just not wanting to be accountable and looking at themselves, even though people are telling them, hey, look, this is why you're getting this response. You're doing X, Y, Z, and then they don't want to look at themselves and change. The male in the household, I mean, and it's so different, right? Because when we're talking about roles and we're in a society where there really aren't, the roles are, let's just say they're moving, right? It's like floating, right? It's more like it's floating on top of water. And so it's really not stagnant or still, right? Those roles now change based on people and their relationships. But one of the things that, with when we're talking about developing young men, and young men that want to be able to, lead a household or be, the head, or however they look at it, or to be a leader in the household, maybe not the person, but a leader, is flexibility. One of the things that young men have to learn if they're going to lead a home, is they have to be the most flexible person in the home. Right. So what that means is you're the person bending over backwards more than if you choose to have, depending on the role, right? So if we're talking about, if you choose to have, let's just say, a mate, and that mate is the person that is going to be the person that is primarily taking care of the nurturing of the children, right? Because it's not ever always equal, right? There's always going to be one person that, because both people, there's going to be somebody that's a little bit better at that role than the other. Like you said, two heads are better than one. There's going to be somebody that that's more efficient at getting the kids bathed, teaching them how to read, teaching them, doing their homework. There's always going to be someone that's just a little bit better, right? Everybody has a role. Everybody can't hunt. Somebody gotta cook the food, right? So that person, right? But the person that is not doing that, the person that at the end of the day is gonna be the this is pretty much what we're gonna do kind of thing, right? That makes the final call. That person has to be the most flexible. That means the person that's the harder job, because if your family needs food, right, or let's say they need a new house, but you're like, man, no, this business is going to get us successful, but the house is flooding, and man, we really just need to move. We can't wait another 5 years for this dream of yours. We need to move and then work on the dream. You got to be flexible. You got to be able to make that happen. And a lot of men don't want to be flexible in their house. They don't want to be flexible when they're young. Right. It's okay if you want to be a football player, you want to be a basketball player, you want to be a rapper, but God dog, man, you got to be able to make money right now too. Right. You can't just be like, I'm not going to do nothing until this basketball career kick off. Man, you 45. You know, talk about a basketball career, man, or whatever. Like you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible on your journey.
So I guess the thing that they should be shooting for, what you're saying, is to be as dynamic of a leader as their team needs them to be.
Absolutely.
As dynamic as their family needs them to be. Whatever your family's needs are, you're that person that needs to find the ability to be able to stretch and to fit that hole wherever it is. And we shouldn't let, I guess, too much rigidity when it comes to what our idea of what our role is stop us from providing what it is our family is requesting of us. That's what you're saying.
The family comes first. I mean, if you're a young man and you're wanting to have a family, the family comes first. You come second. You come after the family. You don't come before the family, right? If you're going to get with somebody and you are going to raise a family with that person, both people have to understand. But we're talking about young men, right? The family comes first. What the family needs comes first. So, and then whatever you want to do for the family comes second, because the family has to be sustained, because the family is your most important investment. The family is the most important investment. One of the reason why there are so many issues in young kids' lives is that the parents aren't making the family the most important investment. What do I mean by that? What do I mean? For example, when you have an investment, you protect your investment. You think of anything that you're invested in that you care about, because whether you have an investment where you love something, you're going to care for it. So are you watching what your kids are looking at? Are you watching what they're reading? Social media, right? You're protecting your investment. That's so the family comes first. You got to do all that. But if you're like just focused on yourself and you're not tending to those things, then it's the cart leading the horse. It's backwards. And then you have the results of what would happen if the cart was leading the horse.
So if we had, I guess this is the term that you could sum it up as, if we had more servant leaders in households, it would probably lead to a much better society.
Absolutely. 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 More servant leaders in the household, because that's what a leader does. A leader serves, right? And when you're serving somebody, when you're waiting on somebody, you're being flexible. Oh, I need this. Hey, can you grab me this? Hey, we got to get this done over here. And you're serving and you're doing those things. You're not putting yourself in the center, right? So, I mean, you think about when you go to a restaurant now, customer service is a lot different than what it used to be back in the day. Right. There was an idea before that the customer was always right. It wasn't that they were, but it was just that was the kind of service you wanted to provide. They weren't always right. It wasn't the fact they were always right. Most times the customers are wrong. But the level of service you wanted to provide was, okay, we're going to let the customer have it because we want the customer to come back. You're right, ma'am. You asked for a medium rare steak, not a well done steak. Knowing good and darn well she wanted that thing cooked like a tire. That's what she said. But you're right, ma'am. You asked for a medium rare, no problem. We're gonna fix that up. It's service, right? And so right now we have a lot of people that are selfish. They're looking at themselves in the center. They're putting themselves in the center, and that's the result of what's going on right now. Think about it. You got young adults that want to idolize people that talk about things that influence young adults to take certain actions, and then they're glorified for that. right? They're glorified for that. So what do I mean? You have, you know, whether it's rappers, influencers, or whatever, that talk about certain things that a child should never hear. That's the parents' fault, first of all. But they end up hearing it and they end up making money from it, and then they're glorified for it. They're glorified for it. Well, that's how selfish is that? Man, well, hey, I'm thanking God for all the success I had. At the same time, man, you just bad. You just a whole community, a whole group of kids can memorize all your lyrics and they can't even read, but they can memorize all this stuff. Not saying that this that person's fault in particular. Again, it's the parents' fault, but look at the level of selfishness that's happening and how it's impacting youth. That's just one.
Yeah, I think that I agree. I think that's selfish because there's no in the world you can tell me that a lot of these entertainers don't know that the stuff that they're saying is wrong. A lot of them make the excuse that they're telling their story. But at the same time, this is how how this influences people. You know how the music influenced you coming up. You know how it made you want to do these different activities that probably weren't good for you or your community. So yeah, it's definitely selfish on them. But
Right.
then you have to think every other community is subjected to that exact same influence. They have the same access to the music and all that, but it tends to hurt certain communities even more. And so then that poses the question that maybe it's a culture thing too.
Um, yeah, it does. I mean, it maybe it is. I mean, at the same time, the in the US, you don't see you don't see that with other cultures the way you do, with, the black community, for example. You do not there everybody enjoys hip hop, not everybody knows how to separate the two. For example, wrestling, when you were a kid, you thought wrestling was real. You became an adult and you realize it's fake, right? It's all entertainment. There's no way somebody's getting pile drived and not breaking their neck. There's no way that these, right? So it's entertainment, right? They go to school, they get trained. You realize that there's a whole, I don't want to say gimmick, but there's a whole business side, right? There's a whole strategy behind it. But a young kid doesn't know that. They don't know that. You've never listened to Luther Vandross on a drive-by shooting. You've never done it. Nobody's ever done it. You don't listen to do 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 do. And they listen to Luther, man. You listen to whatever's gonna get you turned up. For real, man. For real. He's just had, man. I mean, case in point, you just don't, man. You ain't listening to
That's
Keith
crazy.
Sweat or Johnny Gill or none of them, bro. I mean, when you think about it, you listen to whatever's going to get you in the mood for that action, right?
Right.
And so it impacts the youth, and it's impacting the youth. Again, it's not the entertainers. We can't fault them solely. We can't, right? Because at the same time, they're, even though that's sort of some of the music that's coming out, or the things that are coming out on social media, they're still the ones that will come and do an event. They'll show up to a school. They'll give money, right? They'll show up to an event. They'll give um, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars worth of school supplies. For example, I mean, shoot, man, Lil Baby in Atlanta this summer did an event and gave away like a whole truckload full of school supplies for kids in Atlanta, over in Oakland City. But you don't hear about it, right? I mean, gave away thousands of dollars worth of school supplies so kids could go to school. So they could, I mean, books, paper, computers. I mean, there are people out there giving away computers, right, to kids, right? And so a lot of them are doing a lot of good with the money that they're making, right? But the kids don't necessarily hear about that part, right? Because that's the part you want them to hear about, right? You want them to hear about, yeah, man, you see him on TV, you see him rapping, man, but look at what he's doing over here as well, right? Those are the good things that they do. But then you have the average Joe, so to speak, the person that's criticizing them, man, and they won't give a dollar to a man on the street.
Hmm. That's a
They'll
good
see,
point.
they won't give a dollar to, they'll have a neighbor's kid that won't have shoes, And what they'll do is they'll gossip and talk about the neighbor and how bad the neighbor is for not giving their kids some shoes, not knowing that the man done lost his job, the woman done lost her job, they trying to survive. They'll talk about the neighbor instead of taking the $50, $60, $100, whatever, to get the kid a pair of shoes. And then they'll turn around and be like, man, look at all these people doing all this stuff, right? So then it's so much, right? So, I mean.
So it's almost like, hey, if you're gonna open your mouth to criticize, at least do your part.
Do something about it. Yeah, if you see an issue, do something about it. It's not on them. I mean, we do something about it. For young men, is particularly, you see all these problems out here in the world. Do something about it. Pick one. We talk about how success is hard to become successful. No, it's not. It's not hard to become successful. You are successful when you change your self-image of yourself. When you change the image you have of yourself, then you are successful. Success is a progressive realization of a worthwhile dream. It's not hard to become successful, right? You can become successful once you change that self-image. But there are so many issues out here in the world that you can pick an issue that you feel strongly about and attack that issue, and the things that you want in life, those material things, those whatever kind of lifestyle you want, will come along with whatever it is, whatever problems you're solving.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, that success is relative and you don't have to be a millionaire or anything like that. It all really just depends on what's important to you and what you want to pursue. And so I think that's a good one to end it on, since we're wrapping up close on time now. And so for anyone that wants to find you and look into what you're doing, where could they go?
The best way to find me is SF Dreams Big on IG. Follow me on IG. SF Dreams Big is the best way to find me. If they want any of the information about, the magazine and stuff like that, then they can go to YCHIAMAG.com. Stands for You Can Have It All Magazine.com. You can just type in You Can Have It All Magazine. It'll pop right up. Yeah.
All right.
That's the best way to get me. Yes, sir.
All right, great. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on to the show. I think we had a great interview. I think you offered a lot of value, and looking forward to getting this posted and everything. All right.
Let's do it, man. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise, man. Take care.
All right. You too.